Emma Parker was 22 years old, standing at the edge of adulthood with a fresh college degree in hand. She had worked hard for this moment, but instead of celebrating, she found herself thinking about the home that had shaped her life, the house she had inherited from her mother, the only true constant she had ever known. Her mother, Rachel Parker, had always been a planner. Even before she was diagnosed with intestinal cancer, she had made sure every detail of their lives was secure. She had bought the house long before meeting Emma's father, ensuring that no matter what happened, her daughter would always have a place to call home. Rachel had often told Emma, "This house is yours, no matter what. You will never be without a roof over your head." At the time, Emma hadn't understood just how much those words would mean. Her father, Daniel Parker, had left when Emma was just 9 years old. There had been no dramatic fights, no custody battles, just quiet abandonment. One day, he was there, and the next, he was gone, leaving behind only an agreement to fund Emma's college education. That was his version of child support, a lump sum payment that he considered his final obligation. Daniel moved on quickly. Within a year, he had married a woman named Laura, and they soon had a daughter, Ava, who was 10 years younger than Emma. Emma had spent some weekends in their rented house, but she had never felt like she belonged. Laura had always been polite but distant, treating her like a guest rather than family. Her father had been no better, always working, always too busy to spend time with her. "Emma, would you like to stay for dinner?" Laura would ask with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Emma had learned early on that it was easier to keep her distance. Birthday cards were exchanged, the occasional holiday greetings were sent, but beyond that, their relationship was little more than a formality. Through it all, her mother had been her rock. When Rachel was diagnosed with cancer, she fought with everything she had. For 4 years, Emma watched her mother battle for her life, but in the end, cancer took what it wanted. Emma was 18 when she lost the only person who had ever truly cared for her. Now, standing on the doorstep of the house that held all her memories, she had no idea what was waiting for her inside. At 18, Emma Parker lost the most important person in her life, her mother. Just weeks before she was set to leave for college, Rachel passed away, leaving Emma alone in a house filled with memories. The grief was unbearable, a weight so heavy she could barely function. Then something unexpected happened. Her father, Daniel, along with his wife, Laura, and their daughter, Ava, showed up at the house. Emma had never been particularly close to them, but in that moment, she was too drained to question their sudden presence. "We'll help you through this," Daniel had said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Laura had nodded, her expression carefully composed. For the first time in years, Emma's allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she still had a family. They moved in temporarily, helping with funeral arrangements, sorting through Rachel's belongings, and making sure Emma wasn't drowning in loneliness. Ava, who had always treated her like a distant cousin rather than a sister, even made an effort to talk to her. It was the first time Emma had felt included in their world. Then, one morning over breakfast, Daniel presented an idea. "Emma," he said, setting down his coffee mug, "I've been thinking. Since you're starting college soon, leaving the house empty doesn't make sense. What if we stayed here? We'll handle the bills, maintain the place, you won't have to worry about a thing." Emma hesitated, glancing at Laura, who was flipping pancakes at the stove. Laura turned and smiled, her tone warm, almost eager. "It would be good for all of us," she added. "Ava has already started at the local school, and this way, your mother's house will be well cared for." Emma felt torn. The house was all she had left of her mother, but selling it wasn't an option. And the idea of it sitting empty while she was states away felt wrong. Over the past 2 months, things had been good. Laura had softened toward her, Ava had started treating her like an actual sister, and even Daniel seemed to be making an effort. Maybe this was a fresh start, a chance to finally have the family she had always longed for. So she agreed. She packed away her mother's personal things, keeping the most precious items and storing the rest in the attic. And when she left for college that fall, she did so with a surprising sense of peace, confident she had made the right decision. Looking back, She would regret it more than anything. For the next 4 years, Emma built a new life away from home. College was a whirlwind of classes, late-night study sessions, and newfound independence. But no matter how busy she was, she always looked forward to coming home for the holidays. Each visit felt like stepping into a family she had never truly had before. Laura would cook big welcome-home dinners, making her favorite meals as if she had always known Emma's tastes. "I made your favorite pasta," Laura would say with a warm smile, setting a plate in front of her. Ava, once distant, now treated her like a real sister, dragging her into her room to show off her latest artwork or spill middle school drama. Christmases were especially cozy, decorating the tree together, drinking hot chocolate, and laughing over silly family traditions. Daniel, too, made an effort, asking about her classes, her future plans, and her life outside of home. Over time, Emma started believing that this was what family was supposed to feel like. Even when she was away, she stayed connected. Weekly calls with her dad, chats with Laura about house maintenance, and FaceTime sessions with Ava, who kept her updated on school adventures. Everything seemed perfect. But what Emma didn't realize was that while she was embracing the idea of family, they were building a different reality behind her back. While she believed she was returning to a home filled with love and warmth, she had no idea that the house, her house, was slowly being reshaped into something that no longer belonged to her. By the time she graduated and returned for good, the betrayal waiting for her would be nothing short of devastating. Emma had spent years imagining this moment, coming home for good. She had graduated, landed a promising job at Bennett and Reynolds Financial, and was ready to settle back into the house that had always been her safe haven. But the moment she stepped onto the front porch, suitcase in hand, something felt off. The rose bushes her mother had planted were still there, but they had been trimmed differently. New curtains hung in the windows. Small, unfamiliar decorations peeked through the glass. Brushing away the unease, she reached for her key, eager to step inside. But when she inserted it into the lock, it wouldn't turn. Frowning, she tried again. A sinking feeling spread through her chest as she knocked on the door. After a long pause, Laura answered, wearing an apron dusted with flour, as if she had been baking. Her face twisted in surprise, not excitement, not warmth, just shock. "Emma," she said, gripping the door. "What are you doing here?" Emma let out a nervous laugh, lifting her suitcase. "What do you mean? I live here." She moved to step inside, but Laura didn't budge. Behind her, Daniel and Ava were in the living room, both looking equally startled. Emma's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. "Why were the locks changed?" she demanded. Daniel cleared his throat, touching his neck, a nervous habit she recognized from childhood. For safety," he muttered. "There were break-ins in the neighborhood." "You never told me," she said, her voice growing sharp. "And you never gave me a new key." Daniel sighed. "Emma, can we talk?" "In the office." She followed him into what had once been her mother's office, and as he closed the door behind them, Emma saw his hands shaking. Then he told her the truth. "Laura thinks this house belongs to me." Emma's world tilted. The air in the room grew heavy. He had lied. For 4 years, he had let Laura believe the house was his. And now, she believed Emma had no place in it at all. Emma stared at her father in disbelief, her heart hammering in her chest. "You told her what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I told Laura that this house was mine, that I gave it to your mother out of kindness after the divorce. She thinks that after Rachel passed, it automatically reverted to me." Emma's stomach twisted. "So, she doesn't know anything?" He shook his head. "You let her live here, thinking she owns my house," she whispered, rage bubbling beneath her shock. Daniel avoided her gaze. "Emma, listen. It just happened. At first, I didn't think it mattered. Then the years passed and I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth." She could barely breathe. "So, what am I supposed to do now?" "Just give me some time," he pleaded. "Let me figure out how to handle this without ruining my marriage." Emma let out a short, humorless laugh. "Your marriage? What about me, Dad? This is my home." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. Here. These are for the new locks. You can stay. Just don't say anything to Laura yet. Please. Let me handle it my way. Emma clenched her jaw, feeling trapped. This wasn't a battle she was prepared for, not yet. Fine, she muttered, snatching the keys. But this is insane, Dad. You know that, right? He exhaled in relief. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll make this right, I promise. She doubted that. The tension in the house grew unbearable almost immediately. At dinner that night, Linda barely looked at her. Her polite smiles were gone, replaced by cold indifference. Even Ava, who once clung to Emma, had started keeping her distance, watching her mother carefully, mirroring her behavior. Then came the little acts of sabotage. One morning, Emma found her freshly washed clothes dyed pink. Oh, Linda said flatly when Emma confronted her. Must have been a mistake. I thought that was Ava's laundry. At dinner, there was always just enough food for three, forcing Emma to cook her own meals. The furniture in the house, the very things her mother had carefully arranged, started moving. Subtle at first, then drastic. Emma found her mother's favorite vase shoved into a back corner, replaced by some generic, modern decor. Just making a few updates, Linda said with a smug smile. Emma saw through it. One morning, as she poured herself coffee, Linda leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So, when are you thinking about getting your own place? She asked, her voice light but pointed. Emma clenched the coffee mug. I live here, Linda. Linda just hummed, sipping her own coffee as if she hadn't heard her. The message was clear. Then, one Saturday morning, Emma woke up to a silence that felt wrong. No clinking of dishes in the kitchen. No music from Ava's room. No hum of the TV where Daniel usually watched the morning news. She padded downstairs in her pajamas. The house was empty. Her heart pounded as she called her father. Straight to voicemail. Next, she tried Ava. No answer. Finally, she called Linda. The phone rang for a long time before Linda finally picked up. In the background, Emma could hear waves crashing, distant laughter, and what sounded like tropical music. Oh, Linda said mockingly. Did we forget to mention? We're in the Maldives. First-class flights, luxury resort. The works? Emma's throat went dry. What? Yeah, Linda continued, her voice dripping with venom. We didn't want you tagging along and expecting us to pay for you too. Not that you'd know anything about paying your own way. Emma gripped the phone. What are you talking about? Linda laughed. You seriously don't get it, do you? You're nothing but a lazy freeloader, Emma. Living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities. It's embarrassing, really. Emma's entire body went cold. This is my house. Oh, please. Linda scoffed. Your father never loved you, Emma. You were just an obligation. He already wasted enough money on your college education, and now you're clinging to this house like it's still yours. But let me make this clear. When we get back, I want you gone. Pack your things and get out. Emma's grip on the phone tightened. You can't do this. Oh, sweetheart, Linda cooed. Watch me. And don't bother calling Daniel. He agrees with me. He's just too weak to say it himself. We've already blocked your number. Have a nice life, asterisk. The line went dead. Emma sat in silence, the phone slipping from her hands. She had spent 4 years believing she had finally found a family. But the truth was, they had never seen her as family at all. Her father, the man who was supposed to protect her, had stood by and let this happen. Her hand shook, not from sadness, but from something stronger. Fury. This was her house, and she wasn't going anywhere. Emma sat in stunned silence, Linda's venomous words still ringing in her ears. The shock of betrayal faded quickly, replaced by something much stronger, rage. She had been blind. She had spent years believing that she was part of a family, that her father had stepped up when she needed him. But the truth was uglier than she ever imagined. They had never loved her. She was nothing more than an inconvenience, an obligation. Her grip tightened around the phone. Enough. With a newfound clarity, she got to work. She moved swiftly, fueled by anger and determination. She went room by room, collecting everything that wasn't hers. Linda's designer clothes, Daniel's golf clubs, Ava's school supplies. It all went into boxes, bags, and suitcases, stacked neatly in the garage like they had never belonged there in the first place. She called a 24-hour locksmith, paying extra for immediate service. The old locks were removed, replaced with brand new ones. By the time the locksmith handed her the new set of keys, she felt something she hadn't in weeks: control. She was done being pushed around. That night, she stood in the center of the house, breathing it in. Her house. The walls felt lighter, the air less suffocating. She had taken it back. By Monday morning, she walked into Bennett and Reynolds Financial with her head held high, ready to start her new job. She was finally moving forward. But deep down, she knew the fight wasn't over. 14 days later, Emma pulled into the driveway after work and saw them. Daniel, Linda, and Ava stood outside, suitcases at their feet. Their faces twisted with fury and disbelief as they stared at the locked front door. Linda was the first to snap. "You changed the locks?" she screeched, storming toward Emma as she stepped out of her car. "How dare you lock us out of our house?" Emma barely spared her a glance as she walked past them, calmly unlocking the door. "It's not your house, Linda," she said smoothly, stepping inside. Linda shoved forward, but Emma held the doorframe, blocking her entrance. "Move," Linda ordered. Emma tilted her head, feigning confusion.
"Why?"
"This isn't your home." Daniel finally spoke, his voice strained. "Emma, please.
"Let's talk about this."
Emma let out a bitter laugh. "You mean like how you talked to me before leaving me here, alone, while you took a luxury vacation?" Linda's face turned red. "You ungrateful little—" Emma cut her off. "Enough." Her voice was cold, final. She turned to Daniel. "Tell her, Dad. Tell her, who actually owns this house." Daniel's face crumbled. He swallowed hard, then turned to his wife, defeated. "Emma's right," he admitted. "This house was never mine. It belonged to Rachel. She left it to Emma in her will. It's hers. It always has been." The color drained from Linda's face. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. But you told me." She turned to Emma, her expression shifting from rage to desperate kindness in an instant. "Emma, sweetheart, listen to me. I only said those things on the phone because I was upset. We're family. We can fix this." Emma folded her arms. "Family?" she repeated, mocking the word. Linda forced a laugh, stepping forward, reaching out as if to touch Emma's arm. "Come on, honey. Think of Ava. She loves you. We don't have to let this ruin everything." From behind, Ava stayed silent, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Emma didn't move. "You know what's funny, Linda?" she said, tilting her head. "The moment you thought this house belonged to you, you made me feel like an unwanted guest. You did everything in your power to push me out. You sabotaged my things. You made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. And now that you realize it was never yours? Now you want to be families?" Linda stiffened. "We were just— I didn't mean—" Emma smiled coldly. "You meant every word. And now you're going to leave." Linda's face twisted back into rage. "You think you can just throw us out? We have nowhere to go." Emma leaned against the door. "You just spent thousands on a tropical vacation. Pretty sure you can afford an apartment." Linda let out a furious scream, grabbing a suitcase and hurling it at the ground. "You're a selfish little—" Daniel grabbed her arm, defeated. "Let's go, Laura." Linda whipped around, shoving him away. "No. You did this. You lied to me for years. I wasted my time in this house for nothing." Ava, trembling, tugged on Linda's sleeve. "Mom, please." Linda turned, her face hardening. "Get in the car, Ava. We're leaving." Emma watched them load their belongings into their rental car, their anger boiling over into whispered arguments. Daniel looked back one last time, his face etched with guilt. "Emma?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." Emma didn't respond. As the car pulled out of the driveway, she exhaled, closing the door behind her. For the first time in years, she was finally, truly home. As the last of the suitcases were shoved into the trunk, Linda turned back one final time, her face twisted with fury. "You ungrateful little, after everything we've done for you," she screamed, her voice shrill with rage. "We took care of this house. We took care of you. And this is how you repay us." Emma stood at the doorway, calm and unmoved. "Took care of me?" she repeated, tilting her head. "You mean the way you tried to erase every trace of my mother? The way you treated me like an intruder in my own home? The way you laughed while telling me to get out?" Linda's face turned red, but she had no defense. Instead, she spat on the ground, shoving past Daniel as she climbed into the car. Ava lingered for a moment, her eyes flickering with hesitation, but ultimately, she followed her mother without. Daniel, however, stood there, his shoulders sagging, his face filled with regret. "Emma, please. I know I handled things badly, but I love you." She held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Don't," she said, her voice firm and steady. "If you had loved me, you wouldn't have let her treat me like garbage in my own house. You wouldn't have lied to her about who this house belonged to. You wouldn't have stood by while she tried to kick me out." Daniel opened his mouth, searching for words, but nothing came. Emma took a deep breath, stepping back inside the house. "This conversation is over." With that, she closed the door, locking it behind her. She blocked their numbers, her father's, Linda's, even Ava's. Whatever connection they had left.
Gone.
She had wasted enough years trying to belong to a family that had never truly wanted her. Now she was done. The house was hers again, but it still felt like it carried the weight of the past 4 years. So she got to work. She moved the furniture back, restoring everything to how her mother had arranged it. Linda's cheap decorations were tossed out. The walls, once painted in dull neutrals, were repainted with warm colors that made the house feel alive again. She even replanted her mother's favorite rose bushes, watching as they began to bloom in the front yard, a symbol of the life she was reclaiming. For the first time in years, she felt at peace. She threw herself into her new job, excelling quickly. Her colleagues were kind and supportive, especially Sarah, the analyst who had taken her under her wing. "You're killing it here," Sarah told her over lunch one day. "I don't think I've ever seen someone settle in so fast." Emma smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in a long time. "For the first time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." At night, she would sit on the couch with a cup of tea, looking around at the house that now felt like home again. She thought about her mother often, her words coming back to her like a whisper in the quiet. "This house is yours. No matter what, you'll always have a home." Her mother had known. She had always known. And because of that, Emma was never truly lost. Weeks passed, and then a month. Daniel still tried to reach out. First through different numbers, then emails, then messages through old family friends. Each time, Emma ignored them. She had nothing left to say. She had spent years chasing the idea of a father, trying to make a place for herself in a family that had never truly included her. But some relationships aren't meant to be saved. Some people, no matter how much you wish otherwise, will never change. And some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. She wasn't sad about it anymore. She wasn't even angry. She was free. And for the first time in her life, she was happy.